Agent, can you sit up straight?
Good morning, grade 8.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Everyone grab up.
Yes.
Kwame's just come down to the office.
My name is Miss Mukatra. Look at it here. Miss Mukatra, you can call me ma'am. I will be teaching you history for the next 2 lessons. So I think I see you guys again on, is it Monday or Wednesday? Wednesday, I think. Wednesday, right? So I'll see you guys again on Wednesday. The topic we will be looking at is the scramble of Africa. I'm going to start this lesson with a video. You can write down notes if you want to. We're not going to discuss it, but it's merely to probe your thoughts on the topic. When I say probe your thoughts, do you guys know what I mean by that?
No, ma'am.
You do or you don't?
No, ma'am.
So I'd like you guys to start thinking about the topic through this video. So just wait, is the sound on before I... Should the sound be on? Okay, it should be on. Oh no, it's not on.
Learning and resources. They wanted to go
Projectors on the trees.
Oh. Is that why you guys...
Throughout history, there have been many.
Takes it down.
Why is there
There is not. And I don't have one. Hey, grade 8.
Grade 8, let's start watching, sorry for that. Technical glitch. You guys see it?
Throughout history, there have been many explorers who discovered new land and brought them into ruins. People like Christopher Columbus, Hernando Cortez, and Henry Lawrence Stanley discovered these new lands, conquered them, abused the natives, and exploited the land's resources.
learning and resources. They wanted to go steal learning and resources from Africa. I think that's what all colonialism is about.
Like Columbus and Cortez, Stanley, under the influence of Leopold II, colonized the Congo while claiming to have brought civilization to the natives. At the time, the Industrial Revolution in Europe made it the most wealthy and advanced continent in the world by far. Europeans believed that they were superior, and that it was their responsibility to bring their advancements to all corners of the world. This belief was responsible for three major events: the near-complete colonization of Africa, the deaths of millions, and the complete change of African society.
During the 19th and early 20th centuries, Europeans believed they had the responsibility and burden to bring commerce, Christianity, and civilization to Africa.
The violation of the Africans' basic rights and ability to self-govern is most exemplified in the Congo Free State. This ugly colonization resulted in effects that are still felt throughout Africa today.
In the late 19th century, Europe was at the top of the world. In every continent, you could find the presence or influence of Europeans. However, one area that still remained uncolonized was sub-Saharan Africa. The only areas ruled by Europeans were a few colonies on the coasts. There were multiple motives for European countries to imperialize Africa, including the harvesting of its natural resources to provide a market for European goods, expanding their empire, and spreading their social and cultural influences. Additionally, a few new developments allowed them to colonize the continent, including the mass production of quinine, which eliminated the threat of malaria. The Industrial Revolution allowed Europeans to create extremely far-spanning empires through the invention of steamers and telegrams, which allowed for contact between the motherland and the most distant colonies. All that was needed was a justification. This was brought forward by missionary David Livingstone. He was a British missionary and explorer who was one of the first Europeans to dig deep into the heart of Africa. Livingstone witnessed the horror of slavery in Africa, and he believed that Africans needed three things: Christianity, commerce, and civilization. He advocated that Africa would be colonized by Europeans, and believed that just a small amount of Europeans ruling the land would bring great prosperity for both Africa and Europe.
Its impact is not so much in spreading Christianity, despite being initially missionary, but in creating European interest.
During Livingstone's adventure in Africa, it was believed that the missionary went missing. An explorer by the name of Henry Morton Stanley was sent on an expedition to find Livingstone. After a 999-day journey, he eventually found Livingstone, and this turned Stanley into an overnight celebrity. Stanley then went on an expedition through the Congo and published a book about his travels called Through the Dark Continent. This inspired the Belgian king Leopold II to hire Stanley to lead an expedition to further explore and colonize the Congo. Leopold II was an extremely ambitious man who hungered for an overseas empire. Even before he was king, he was trying to create colonies in Fiji and Sarawak. But when he became king, Leopold desired land in the Congo. Leopold II formed the International African Association to convince the world that his actions were purely to help the people of the Congo. His efforts were so successful that numerous people praised him, including Viscount de Lesseps, who claimed it was the greatest humanitarian work of this time. Using various people and manipulation, Leopold was able to convince countries like the US, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom to recognize his claim on the Congo. With Stanley's discoveries and Leopold's movements in the Congo, the various European powers grew thirsty for land in Africa. In order to make the colonization more organized, the various European powers were called together by German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck to participate in the Berlin Conference of 1884. In this conference, the European leaders of various countries met to decide how to divide sub-Saharan Africa. Not one African leader attended.
Mostly this is Europeans assuming they have a right to take over Africa, to conquer it, and dividing up between themselves.
They created various articles on how to conquer and rule colonies, including one article which states you must properly treat the natives. Through manipulation and the promise of free trade, Leopold was able to maintain personal control of the Congo as an absolute autocrat, whereas in Belgium he was a constitutional monarch. Leopold's domain was named the Congo Free State.
Because of the Berlin Conference and Leopold's involvement in the Congo, colonization of Africa exploded in speed. Just 30 years, nearly all of Africa had been colonized by Europeans. This was done through a combination of military force, trickery, and manipulation.
They sign treaties that they say mean one thing, but they interpret it another way. That happens many times. So they're claiming sovereignty over the land in false ways.
George Washington Williams reported that Europeans employed numerous tricks, such as using a magnifying glass to light a cigarette, to make Africans believe white men can magically light things on fire. Also, advancements in weapons gave Europeans a huge lead over the Africans. This is most proven with the Maxim gun. Once Europeans were able to take over the majority of Africa, they began to grow more and more dependent on Europe. Africans received no benefit from this rapid European exploitation of the land's resources. Over the continent, the colonial powers used small amounts of Europeans to rule over massive amounts of African natives.
Despite being advertised as a campaign to help the people, the treatment of the natives in the Congo was beyond inhumane. Natives were forced to gather materials such as ivory and rubber. Failure to gather a sufficient amount of these materials could result in your hands being chopped off or your entire village slaughtered. Despite trying to keep the situation in the Congo a mystery, his atrocities were eventually revealed by reporters such as the British consul Roger Casey. Casement went to investigate the events taking place in the Congo Free State. He assembled his findings and published them in what is known as the Casement Report. In the report, Casement mentions the exceptionally cruel treatment and violation of the Congo people's basic human rights. These observations of the Congo Free State brought the state and Leopold into the public view for the first time. More and more people demanded change in the Congo, leading to the creation of the Congo Reform Association. This group included influential people such as Mark Twain and Joseph Conrad, who wrote a scathing book about the cruel events that took place in the Congo called The Heart of Darkness. In 1908, Leopold was forced to relinquish control of the Congo to the Belgian government. Before Leopold took control, the population of the Congo was estimated to be around 20 million. Although, after the end of Leopold's reign, there were around 8.5 million people remaining.
After World War II, African countries began to win their independence. These countries were able to win their independence nearly as fast as they lost it. Africans were left with arbitrary borders, unstable governments, and a sense of dependency on the outside world. The new African leaders were rewarded for selling their country's resources to European powers, resulting in extreme corruption and numerous coups. Furthermore, Africa has yet to get over the colonization, and the world continues to regard it as a victim. This has fostered a sense of dependency for the continent. The borders of nearly every African country were created by Europeans. This means that numerous countries like Nigeria are landlocked and unable to take care of themselves, while larger countries like Nigeria suffer from serious ethnic rivalry.
They weren't basing this on populations or states on the ground, but on boundaries and areas of rule, and they were still determining what those boundaries were up to 1914, but they were largely arbitrary.
To this day, Africa is the poorest continent in the world, and its combined GDP is lower than Germany's. Additionally, the Europeans brought about Christianity, which is currently the second largest religion in Africa.
The Europeans believed that they had the right and the responsibility to improve Africa had extremely far-ranging consequences. Ambitious rulers such as Leopold II took advantage of this belief to take away the rights of the Africans and made it their responsibility to serve their colonial overlords.
It was sold to the Belgian people and it was sold to Europe as we're going to help the Congo, we're going to abolish slavery, and it was just exactly the opposite.
By the early 1900s, the continent of Africa was mostly comprised of European colonies, with millions of Africans being either killed, displaced, or forced to work for the established governments. Africa will forever be scarred by this ugly colonization.
Right, we're not going to discuss that. I'd like you to, as I take you through the rest of the lesson, to ponder on what you've heard. Think of what you believe, what you don't believe, what are your opinions, etc. Right. I'd like you guys to turn your desks a bit, like this half of the class. Yes. Look at that half of the class and you guys look at them. So just like an oval. Make sure that you have your backs towards the projector. So make sure from wherever you're seated, you can see the projector and you can see me. Okay, so what are we seeing on this map over here? Which country is in charge of which area? Sorry about that. Okay, so from this map that we're looking at right now, who has the most land? Which country has the most land? You'll have up first. Please say your name before you speak so I know who you are. Okay.
British.
Britain.
Yeah.
So the British people have the most land. So the British people of Britain have the most land.
No. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. They have the most land.
They had the most land. Alright? Does anyone differ with that? No. Okay. Who had the second greatest land? The country France of the French people. Okay. Okay. Do you think it's fair that people can just walk into someone's land and just take their land and then just that's it?
No.
Okay. Right. So let's look at our. No, we're not going to look at our textbooks. What do you think the colonization of Africa was often? Why do you think the colonization of Africa was often called the scramble for Africa? A, because it was difficult to tell where the borders between different areas of Africa were at the time. B, because the European countries rushed in and grabbed as much of Africa as they could get, or C, because African leaders decided to hand over the land. You had your hand up first, yes ma'am?
Okay, I'm Hannah.
Okay.
I think B.
You think B? Because the European countries rushed in and grabbed as much of Africa as they could get. Do we all agree with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, so you guys are going to look at the map in your textbook on page 168. We're going to list the European countries that took over different parts of Africa. Then at a later stage, you're going to draw up a table and link that table to activity 4. Okay, so let's just name some of the countries that we're seeing in our textbook on page 168. What do we see?
South Africa.
Okay, which colonial powers
Belgium.
do we see and which areas were they in charge of? Okay, so someone said Belgium. So the Belgium, right? So Belgium took over what?
Mozambique and Namibia. Oh, no, is that? Okay, never mind.
No, the Belge took over Congo.
Oh, okay.
Alright, what did the British take?
South Africa.
What else?
Zimbabwe.
What else?
Egypt.
What was Zimbabwe called then?
North.
Oh, and Ghana was called the Gold Coast.
Okay, what was Zimbabwe called then?
Southern Rhodesia.
Southern Rhodesia and a bit of? Well, if you look at today's borders, right? You'd see Botswana, which is Botswana land, but you'd also see a bit of. So the borders have sort of changed over time as well, right? So you see you have Botswana there and you have Zimbabwe there. Okay, who took Germany? Well, Germany took who? Namibia, Cameroon, yes. Who else was in Cameroon today? Yes, the French. Then who was also in Cameroon at some point?
The Spanish.
The British as well. So if you go to Cameroon today, you have Anglophone Cameroon and Francophone Cameroon. So Anglophone would be British English speaking, and Francophone would be French speaking. Alright, so you guys are going to look at all the countries that are here. You look at the country that colonized, right? So you say France, Britain, Belgium, Germany, Italy. What did they take? Alright, and you listen to this, you say, okay, they took, from the best you can tell here, you say which area were they in charge of. You make a table. Okay, that will be your homework. And you link it to activity 4. Now 2, which 2 European countries took over most of the land? Which 2 European countries took over most of the land? Okay, I've spoken to you. Yes, sir, and you, sir.
My name is Titi and Britain.
Britain, okay, and?
And France.
France, your name?
Unti.
Unti. Okay. Cool. Last question, guys. Which 2 African countries remained independent? Okay, from the map, yes. You, ma'am, and you, sir. Your name?
My name is Zizi, and
I don't know how to pronounce this. Abiyasu.
Okay, which is today called Ethiopia. Alright, and you, sir?
My name is Mark, and I think Liberia.
Liberia, okay. There's more history to Liberia, but we won't cover it at this stage. Right, so we're looking at European colonization of Africa in the 19th century. Africa before European colonization. People lived in Africa far longer than anywhere else in the world. Because everyone says, the current theory of archaeology and history and geography says we all come from Africa, right? The modern human comes from Africa. So be you American, be you Australian, be you Chinese, be you whatever you are, we all come from Africa. The modern human comes from Africa. So people lived in Africa far longer than anywhere else in the world. Before European colonization, vast majority of Africa was under African rule. Africa ruled by Africans till the 19th century. There were various civilizations before colonization, and there were wars before colonizations. Right? So when we say civilization, what do you guys usually think? Modern society. Right? So often when we speak about people being civilized, we speak about them being a particular way. And what dominates the discourse is people acting in a Western way or a European way. But there have always been civilizations. Civilizations refer to the organization of society. So when you had the hunter-gatherers, right, who were hunting and gathering, they had to create systems which needed a leader, needed a king, a chief, or something, and that's how civilizations were created, so that then the leader at some point starts trading with someone else. And then, because you don't have, if you live in the northern part and one lives in the southern part, your climate and your weather and your, is different, so your resources are different, so you have to trade. So that's what civilization speaks about. So there were various civilizations before colonization, but the civilizations of Africa and the civilizations of Europe were different. Alright? One wasn't superior to the other, they were just different. Yes, sir, your question.
Ma'am, I was gonna ask, so no country, before colonization, Africa was not independent. I mean, like the people that lived here